Welcome to our class. In this class, I would like to talk about floats, and I'm specifically covering floats on an image. Float is a CSS property, and it enables you to place the element on the right or left of its outer container, whatever that outer container might be. Now, some properties, such as font size, margins, padding, it doesn't matter where that container is. Those properties will work the same regardless. However, floats will work differently depending on what's on top of it, what's on the bottom of it. So they are very specific to the layout of your code. Sometimes they will work beautifully. Sometimes there will be some issues and you'll have to write some code to work with those issues, such as clearing those floats. It's always a good idea to apply one style at a time and then look to see what's happening, rather do everything at once. Now, what we have in the HTML document is what is called the normal flow. So as we lay code on the page, the browser reads it from the top down. So everything stacks on top of each other. So here in our main container, I have a paragraph, an image, a list, a div, a paragraph, and then my footers down here. Everything stacks on top of each other. So if I look at my code, here we are, the header first, the navigation, we'll cover navigation later. There's my paragraph, here's my image, here's my unordered list, etc. If I were to code in an inline style, notice everything is smack to the right of it. So what floats enable us to do is to change the normal flow of the page. Now, if this doesn't look good, obviously to make it look nice, we might need something done to that image, such as placing a margin or padding on the right of it. However, if I set my float to right, it looks perfectly wonderful. And this is the point I'm trying to make. Depending on how you lay things out, you might not need to make any adjustments. However, there are times that you might, and it's not because of the CSS. It's because of what's around the object that you're working with. It has to do with the page layout. All right, so let's go back, and I'm going to do another thing. I'm going to change the height to 300. Now, notice, see this paragraph? Anything under will continue to wrap. And now our footer is actually coming up close. It makes a difference with respect to where the float is and what's around the float. If we were to change the height back to its default, now the paragraph is underneath because there's no more room for it to wrap. So that's the concept of this float. You may need to clear it, you may not need to clear it. So first, let's move this around. Now, how would we do that? As I said earlier, either margin or padding. I kind of like margin. So we already have a style here of 50 pixels. What it does, it puts some distance between here. Now, supposing I wanted this part to be underneath the image. What I would need to do, I would need to clear that float. So here again, depending on your layout, there are times when you might need to clear it, and there are times when it will naturally wrap itself. So if I were to access this div here, and I will just do this inline, because the float is set on the left, I will set the clear property to the left, and now we see that indeed it is underneath the image. Should I wish to move this down a little, I need to put some breaks on top of this, or I could set a top margin. So this is the concept of floats on an image. it allows you to place what is underneath in the code. So we're looking at the normal flow of the document. This image is here. It allows you to change the normal flow. So if the image is floated on the left, then what is underneath it wraps alongside the image. If the image is floated on the right, what is underneath it wraps alongside it. If the image is floated on the right, and now I have to change this, it will wrap around it on the left. However, when you look at this web page, you see the unordered list on the left and you see the image on the right. You might think to yourself that in the HTML, the unordered list was coded first. That is not correct. It only looks that way because we have set the float property on this image to right. So here, the unordered list is actually underneath the image. It's not on the top. So when you're laying out your page, please be aware of that. So the rule of thumb is what is underneath the image will wrap either to the right or the left, depending on whether you set the float property to right or to left.